This was definitely the kind of win the Bulls needed. A very strong game on offense, great shooting, excellent shot selection. They took care of the ball outside of the first quarter anyway, where I believe they had 6 turnovers alone. And you had huge nights from the Bulls' big three, which you certainly needed given the Bulls were without yet another key rotational player and actually a starter more recently in Dosunmu entering the concussion protocol. And by the way, we actually didn't have an update or timetable on his return until he clears all the concussion protocol tests. That was according to Billy Donovan before the game. So in any event, despite being incredibly shorthanded, where the Bulls had very little depth tonight, especially when you look at who was coming off of the bench, but in a game where you needed a win after losing the last two, to come in and really control most of this game to get the W and remain at the top of the Eastern Conference with how competitive the standings are currently, that's what you want to see. So let's talk about it. Now, I actually had predicted in my weekly preview video that the Bulls would win this game because I felt they matched up well against the Hornets and their lack of talent in the front court and the fact that the Hornets are a pretty poor defensive team. And if it came down to winning this one in a shootout, that the Bulls would have the upper hand. That being said, though, going into this game, because the Hornets were on a 5-game losing streak, the fact that Iowa wasn't going to be in the lineup, I figured the Hornets were going to be hungry for a win and really make the Bulls earn this one. But as I said, the Bulls really controlled this one throughout. Like, yes, the Hornets made some runs here and there. They started out the first quarter strong, but the Bulls really took control and never looked back when they went on that 19-2 run in the second quarter. And I believe they closed out the half going on a 21-6 run. But anyway, let's talk about the big three, though, because these guys were incredible when you look at how efficient they played tonight. The composure to slow the pace down and get a bucket whenever the Hornets went on a run. That's what you need to see from your big three. And I talked about this in that it really needs to be a big game for Vucevic because the Hornets are not a strong team at the 5 spot. Mason Plumlee being your starting 5 is not going to cut it when you're going up against a guy like Vucevic. And you know what I liked about Vucevic tonight was that he didn't take a single 3. Now, some would say, well, that's a problem because we need Vucevic to help space the floor. That's what makes him a threat to other teams, is that he's a good enough 3-point shooter that defenders still have to respect him standing out on the perimeter. But that's exactly the point. Vucevic was still able to spread the floor by drawing away the defenders to allow for drives from Levine and Derozan, but he was still at least smarter in the kind of shots that he was putting up. And when you're going against a team as weak inside as the Hornets are, Vucevic focused more of his effort in the paint. And he even had some nice mid-range jumpers as well. But by Vucevic focusing on his inside game, he went 9 for 13 from the floor. He had 18 points and 15 rebounds to go along with 8 assists, was just 2 assists shy from a triple-double. And Vucevic was playing some solid defense as well, protecting the rim. He had 3 blocks tonight. And how about Zach Levine? Was finding that stroke from behind the arc like he went off in that epic game in which he had 13 threes and that one shining moment of the dark days during the Jim Boylan era, when the Bulls had that epic comeback against the Hornets a couple years back. I wasn't sure, with the way that he started off knocking down those threes, if he was going to have another one of those types of games in Charlotte. Not quite, but he did have 27 points, shooting 8 for 18 and 5 for 10 from 3. And what I've also liked seeing from Levine in the past few games is his aggression in drawing contact and getting to the foul line. He had another 7 free throw attempts tonight. Levine also, to go along with his 27 points, had 7 rebounds and 5 assists. And then, of course, Demar Derozan. When I look at the box score and see his numbers, it's almost ridiculous just how efficient he has been this season. Tonight, he was 13 for 19 from the floor. He was even stroking it from deep, going 3 for 4 from 3. He finished the game with 36 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. He did have 5 turnovers, though. Both him and Vucevic actually had 9 of the Bulls' 12 turnovers tonight. But again, their usage was high, so sometimes you kind of expect that. And then Coby White had himself a solid game, taking the most of an opportunity to start with Io being out. Wasn't the most efficient from the floor, but I think what impressed me the most about Coby was that he actually was making some solid defensive plays and really hustling on that end of the floor. He still ended up finishing the game with 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists, and we needed a strong effort like that tonight from Coby, given all the guys being out of the lineup. Off the bench, nothing to really get too excited about. Troy Brown Jr. had a decent game by the numbers and actually hit a big 3 in the 4th to stop the Hornets going on that 10-0 run, where you kind of started worrying if they were actually going to be making a comeback there towards the end of it. But at the same time, Troy Brown Jr. still, has those mental lapses on the court that kind of make you scratch your head. But hey, he was a plus 17 tonight in box plus minus, so I guess we can't be too hard on him. All around, though, like I said, this was a solid game for the Bulls because they actually played hard, keeping up the energy. Even though their defense wasn't perfect, they at least played hard on that end of the floor. And finally, the Bulls had a strong shooting night from deep. That's really what has kind of killed them in the past few games, not just their poor three-point shooting, but also defending the three against their opponent, which tonight the Bulls did the opposite of, and shooting 16 for 33 from three, 48%, and holding the Hornets to 30% from three. Lately, we've kind of been seeing the reverse of that in the game recaps. The Bulls moved the ball well with 27 assists in total. They did a great job at crashing the boards, but not so well in terms of giving the Hornets way too many second chance opportunities, as they had 12 offensive rebounds in total. Lucky for us, though, the Hornets didn't capitalize on actually scoring on those second chance opportunities. Otherwise, the game might have been considerably closer. Anyway, though, with this win, the Bulls remain third in the East, a half game back behind the Bucks and a full game back behind the Heat. Things are certainly staying close at the top of the Eastern Conference, and I think we're all waiting to see how the trade deadline shakes out tomorrow. All the moves happening around the league, how that will shift the dynamics, whether some big names get moved across conferences or go to an interconference rival. I'll be keeping my eyes peeled on the deadline and see what moves, if any, the Bulls will be making to improve their roster even further. I'll obviously have a video out if there are any transactions that are made, and I'll likely have a trade deadline recap and grades for each of the Bulls' moves if they make any moves. Like I've talked about before, I think the Bulls will likely be more active on the buyout market than the actual trade deadline, but you never know with this front office. They like making big moves, and we'll see if one is coming tomorrow. So stay tuned. Hope you guys have a very great evening, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.